All right, welcome everyone to SirAntwi Education channel, grade 12. Today we are going to focus on a theory, specifically to see the detailed study tips, what you must do. And I know in most cases, learners struggle with the theory as compared to the practical. But then when you ask majority of learners, they will tell you theory is easier, but then I believe theory is where learners do not get a lot of marks. So today we are going to make sure that we cover all the detailed study tips. I've compiled the topics that you need to know from grade 10. Remember the theory questions, they set it from grade 10, not just grade 12 content. So I've compiled for each the grade 10, grade 11, and then grade 12 concept. And then also answers to previous question papers, we will discuss them. So please, if you have any question, don't forget to add it in the comment section. If there's any question that is giving you a problem, you can type it or you ask. I will always check that aspect. Right. So without wasting much time, let's move straight to the first concept, which is system technologies. And in most cases, system technologies covers question 4 and then 8, question 4, question 9, and then 10. Then also multiple choice. That's section A, or I must say section A. Right. So that is the system technology, the question number that you must always watch out for. Question 4 being 25 marks, question 9, 25, question 10 also 25, and then section A also 25. So all in all, you might be getting about 1/3 of the entire paper being system technology. That is 50 marks. So in most cases, system technologies will be covering about 50 marks. Now, the first thing that we should know from system technology is the definition of a computer. From our grade 10, we know that computers are electronic devices. The keywords are very, very important when dealing with the theory concept. Don't forget to always pick the keyword. So this lesson, I will always be highlighting the keyword for everybody. So now, in this situation, the keyword here is electronic device. That's the definition of a computer that produce or that process data into information. So they process it into information. Right. Now, again, you have to know different types of computers in terms of the purpose. One is the dedicated or the embedded computers. Those are the devices for specific tasks. So these are the key where they are only performing a specific task like ATM or GPS. So they can ask you dedicated or embedded systems. And then the general purpose computers, or sometimes they call it all-in-one computers. So they are all the same. Dedicated or all-in-one computers. They perform many tasks. For example, they can be used to type, to do so many tasks, to type, and then also play games. So this type of computers, in most cases, they do what you call you can use for multitasking. That is, you can do so many tasks at the same time. So you can do so many tasks at the same time using the general purpose computers. Right. Again, you must also know under the basic concept, the data, information, and then knowledge, and then conclusion. In grade 12, you will have to differentiate between these concepts. Data is raw facts. and figures that are meaningless. So here the keyword is meaningless, raw facts, and figures. And then the raw facts and figures could be numbers. When we talk about raw facts and figures, they can ask you that question. Also, take note, it could be numbers, it could be names, or let's say text, and so on. So these are the raw facts and figures that are yet to be processed. They are just meaningless. They are yet to be processed. Then the information becomes the processed data that is meaningful. The processed data that is meaningful. Like for instance, average age is, or average amount is 20%. So that becomes an information. Then the knowledge is applying the information. If you know, okay, let me give the example from this one, like saying cat mark. Your cat mark is 20. Your cat mark is 20. So that's the data, it's just raw number, which is meaningless. Now, the information, when you process them, let's say you have your cat mark, you convert it to percentage, or you find the average for paper one and paper two, then it becomes what? Information. So the information from here, example, average for paper one, and then paper two, maybe it's 50%. So this one, when you do the calculation, because average is meaningful, you can now understand something from it. Now, the knowledge becomes applying the information. So if you know that your cat mark for the term is 50%, you can now gain some knowledge by applying some information. That means like you pass cat, you got cat mark with an average mark. Now, after that, then you can also make a conclusion out of it. That is making a decision based on what you know. So if you know that you pass cat, then you need to make sure that you make a decision on it. Like for instance, you need to improve. Like here, you can say, next term, I must improve. I must practice more. Paper one, maybe Excel or what, then you know that maybe it's Excel that made you lose a lot of marks. So you need to practice more for next time in paper one. And that is a conclusion. So you can be given a scenario, then they can ask you to deduce the data, the information, the knowledge, and conclusion out of it. So these are the examples that I've also given. So you must take note of that. Right. Then the role of ICT in our daily life. ICT helps us in so many ways. Communication, like what we are doing now. I'm staying somewhere, teaching you, collaboration, watching the videos on YouTube and all sorts of things. Those are the roles ICT play in our daily life and also in workplace. So they can ask you to give one or two roles ICT play in our daily life. For instance, communication becomes easier. You can talk to anybody regardless of the location. You can make a lot of decisions based on ICT, global connectivity in homes and then workplaces. So, and many more. You can talk about so many things, not limited to this, but then you need to know at least two of them. And then the reasons for using computer. Why do we need computer? Because computers, in terms of speed, they process data faster. That's the speed. It's more accurate. And then you can do so many automations. Then it can store a lot of amount of data. And we can do also multitasking. So these are also some of the reasons why people use computers. Then again, under the general concept, you have to know convergence. What is convergence? That is combining multiple functions in one device. example here, if you have your smartphone that has a camera and GPS functions that is combined in the smartphone. Then here under the convergence, you need to also know the advantages and then also disadvantages, at least two of them. Remember, multiple functions are combined, so it's convenient. That is, you can use so many functions just in one device. Cost saving also, instead of you to buy separate or different devices, you can just save by buying one device. Like smartphone these days, people use smartphone to scan instead of you to buy a scanner, and then also email and do so many tasks. So you'll be saving cost. Then portability, easier to carry one device instead of several devices with you. So it is also more portable for us. But then the disadvantages are that if it breaks or one functionality, let's say the touch screen doesn't work, then it will affect the entire system or device. So you won't be able to also use it. Right. Okay, some people are asking to send it. Please, this document, I think I shared it, but I'm going to send it again. If you go to the papers, the theory papers, which I'm going to share the link again with everyone. Please, if I make it to be editor, I do not want people to delete it for me. I want you to get access. You can download it and then also view it. So I'm going to share. When you open it, I've grouped them. These are the theory questions. There are so many questions that you can use to practice. DB papers and then question and answer, the one that I'm sharing with you today. There are so many papers there. And then again, you can find the theory materials that I'm using also in here. And then the notes also, you can find them. And some of them also, the last which question and answer, I will share them also with everyone. So I'm going to share the link over here so that you can have it. Right, and then after this lesson, it will be recorded, and then you also have access to them. Right, now let's move on to the disadvantages again. Battery can be drained. That's multiple tasks, draining the power quickly, and then replacement cost. If you are going to replace these convergent devices, they are also expensive. Right, so these are the disadvantages. You must know at least two advantages and two disadvantages, as well as the definition of it. Then also we have integration of input modes to enhance productivity. We will talk about it also is here. Then information processing cycle, the steps showing how data can become information, the series of stages. You need to know them. What is input? That is entering data into the computer, processing, that's analysis, and then manipulation of the data to become information. Output will be the displaying of the results on the screen or on hard copy. And then the storage, that is saving files for future use. Then the communication is sharing of files. They can ask you to explain any of these aspects of the information processing cycle. Like for instance, if they ask you to define the communication aspect, that is sharing of files with other people. That is the communication. Storage is keeping files, so you must know them. And then each stage, what are some of the hardware devices that are there? We will talk about it also. And then comparing hardware and software. We know that hardware is the physical component of the computer, and then the software is a set of instructions that controls the hardware. Then the peripheral device, which is the external device that connect to the computers, like the mouse, the printer, the USB, all the external devices that are connected to the computer, we call them peripheral devices. Then also the main component of the system unit, that's the CPU, the RAM, the PSU, and then the storage devices. Then we come to the basic or the essential component of the computer. In most cases, when they ask learners about this question, they tend to talk about mouse, keyboard. No. When they talk about basic component, that is part of the computer, which is more important, or the essential component of the computer. Those are the CPU, the RAM, the storage, and then sometimes they even talk about GPU. We can also accept GPU, graphic processing unit. These components enhance the performance of the computer also. So they are the basic component of the computer. The RAM, they hold data temporary, which is volatile. And then the storage, they keep data permanently, which is non-volatile. So you need to know these also. Right, then still under the hardware, different input output storage devices. Like I already talked about, input device like mouse, scanner, webcam, microphone, fingerprint readers, and others. In most cases, they can ask you in the multiple choice. So you have to also know these. Output devices like the speakers for the audio, display, braille readers, monitors, and others. These are the output devices. Then the storage, we have primary storage and then the secondary storage. Now, when we talk about the primary storage, we are referring to the temporary storage volatile, like the RAM, which is expensive per gigabyte, and it has faster access. So they can ask you to compare these two by giving two comparisons. So this is temporary, secondary is what? Permanent or long term. This one volatile meaning they lose the content when the power goes off. For instance, when like I'm doing my work right now, if I don't save this one, the moment I save it, they are kept on the storage. But if I don't save it, they are kept on the RAM. So when the power goes off and my computer doesn't have backup, I will lose that content. Hence, we say volatile. Then in terms of the price, the storage is more, I must say the RAM is more expensive per gigabyte than the storage. What does that mean? When you buy a storage of, let's say, 5 gig, it will be more cheaper as compared to the RAM equivalent size of RAM, which is 5 gig. So hence we say it's expensive per gigabyte than the storage. In terms of the access of the files or data, the RAM is more faster as compared to the secondary storage. Please make sure you don't say faster. Hence, I put it here as faster access of files. I didn't say faster. We must avoid writing one word answer in theory. Otherwise, you are going to lose marks. We don't put one word answer, you will not get the mark. So you can say faster, cheaper, no. Hence, I said here, devices. They can also ask you to compare SSD over HDD. Now, solid state drive is the modern storage for most of these computers. They are replacing hard drive, so they can ask you questions like that. Why are SSDs replacing HDD? Or they can also say, why is HDD still relevant these days? So now I've just separated them. First one, SSDs are faster read or write than the HDD. I did not just say faster read or write. And then also the SSD are more durable than HDD, and then energy efficient. In other words, they consume less power as compared to HDD. But then the disadvantages are that SSDs are more expensive to buy per gigabyte than the HDD. And then they also have smaller capacities than the HDD available. So these are the comparison. If they ask you, ask um, other ones, sometimes they don't even accept them. Like for instance, if you say SSD is electronic, yes, I know SSD is electronic, but then when you just write like that, they don't give you the mark. They are electronic, hence it's faster to read or write as compared to the HDD. Or you can say SSD has no moving part, hence they make room of the read or write being what faster. You don't just say no moving part. They might not give you that mark. So you can stick to these three whenever they ask you to compare these two. Again, you need to know in terms of storage, the difference between cloud storage versus cloud computing and then the grid computing. Now, the cloud storage is saving data online. When you save data online, that's cloud storage. And then the cloud computing, using the apps as well as saving data online. For instance, using Microsoft Office 365 online, using Gmail online, or maybe using apps like maybe Facebook online, using the browser, it's cloud computing. But also cloud computing also involves like the Google Drive, saving of files. Like right now I'm doing cloud computing by saving the documents also there. That's part of cloud computing. And then the great computing, sharing the computer processing power to solve a single problem. That the keywords are these: the shared processing power in order to solve a single problem. And then grid computing, they normally use it for weather forecast. Those businesses that need high processing powers. So they try as much as possible to have different workstations somewhere, and then they share these processing powers in order to solve a single problem. And that is the great computing. You need to know these three, and then advantages and disadvantages. Remember their advantages. Remember they are using internet connectivity, so they need a faster internet connectivity. That's the limitation, disadvantages. And then you need to also know the risk when we are talking about the disadvantages, security concerns. So here, any of these, if they are talking about the disadvantages, as compared to the advantages, for the advantages, like we said, idle resources can be utilized. In terms of the great computing, idle resources can be utilized. And then also in terms of the cloud computing and then the cloud storage, you can have access to your files anywhere, regardless of the location. So access to files anywhere and then any device with internet. So these are the advantages for these two. You can have access to them using any device, whether you keep your things on your laptop, like right now, when I use my smartphone, I can also have access to it. If I go to Pretoria, I can still have access to my files. So these are the advantages. But then the disadvantages are that you need a fast internet connectivity before you can have access to them. Like if you want to use great computing, you need an internet connectivity before you can have access to them. So we have to take note of this. They can ask you the advantages and then disadvantages also. Now, the wearable devices, all the smart devices that we wear on our body, like the smart watches and then the fitness trackers, smart glasses, the Google glasses and others. These are the smart devices that we wear on our body. That's the definition of the wearable devices. Right, HDMI and then VGA, the HDMI transmits both video and then audio, and they have a higher resolution. So they can ask you to compare HDMI versus VGA in terms of their resolution or in terms of what they contain. So they have both audio and visual output, and then they have a high quality as well as the higher resolution. Right. Then the printers, we can have 3D printer. We can also have laser printer, and then also we can have inkjet. But please, they will never ask you to compare inkjet versus laser. That is not examinable, so take note. But then they can ask you to give maybe why would maybe the school use a laser printer. And then we also have MFP, multifunctional printer also. They can ask you any of these, either the definition or maybe why would they use laser or why would they use inkjet, but not to compare the two. So take note of that. So the 3D printer, they create a physical 3D models or three-dimensional models in layers, successive layers. Those are the keywords. You need to know the advantages and then disadvantages also. 3D printer can print so many models. Those are the advantages, toys and others. But then the disadvantages are that they release toxic waste. They release some toxic waste like when you print, those things can be toxic to the environment also. So you need to know them. Right. Then the troubleshooting problems of the hardware. You have to know how to diagnose and fix issues like loose cables, printer issues, scanning issues, disk errors, and others. They can ask you maybe non-responsive applications. How do you solve that? That's using um, Control Alt Delete, that's the task manager, or a printer, you were printing and then they stop printing. What might be the issue and how do you resolve them? These are some of the things. We will look at other questions also. Now, the power settings and then the protection, UPS, surge protectors, and then the power management tools that we use to um, prevent us from losing data, like the UPS, uninterruptible power supply. They give a backup power to the computers so that in case the main power goes off, you can still save your work without losing them. And then surge protectors also, they can also be used to protect our computers. Then the processing, regarding the processing, but before that, let me check if there's any question. Please don't forget to bring your questions and then I'll answer all your questions. Right. Then regarding the processing, processing is transforming input into useful processing or information. Then processing device like CPU, motherboard, RAM, ROM, and others. You need to know them also. RAM, we said they store temporary and others. What are the factors that influence the computer performance? They can ask you this question. Here, they are not talking about the hardware. They say the factor, that means general one. What can make your computer to perform faster or slow? The first one is CPU speed. When they mention the factors influencing the performance, do not say CPU. They did not mention the hardware. They said the factors. So here you need to mention the factor, that's the speed of the CPU, the RAM size, the storage type. Storage type meaning that SSD is faster instead of HDD, GPU power, the presence of malware. Somebody can also say background applications. Running. All these are factors that can also affect how your computer performs. Right. And then still on system technologies, you have to know the compatibility issues, that's backward compatibility, whereby new software or hardware must match the system specification. That's the compatibility. For instance, if I want to install Microsoft Word on my computer, what are some of the specifications that are needed? They will tell you maybe you need operating system Windows 11 and above. You need RAM size of 16 gig and above. You need, let's say, CPU speed of 2.5 gigahertz. So these are the compatibility issues that you need to check, that the requirements. Now, sometimes maybe you want to install, let's say, a certain software, and then that software is not compatible with Windows 10. You are using Windows 10. Then it means that you need to upgrade it in order to solve that kind of problem. Then backward compatibility is where it allows new hardware or software to work with the old system or software. For instance, backward, I'm using Office 365. I will be able to open files that were saved in Office 2013 or Office 2007, the lower versions. But if you are using Office 2013, you cannot open files that are saved in 365 because of the new features that 365 is having. So the backward, the newer software being able to open or work with the older software, and hence we call it the backward compatibility. Now, sometimes they can ask you, how to solve compatibility issues? How do you solve compatibility issues? You can get some questions like that. How do we resolve compatibility issues? One, let's say you cannot open certain files. You have to upgrade to newer version. You can also solve it by having what we call standardization. What do you mean by standardized? Meaning that having the same version. Like in our schools, maybe in your science lab, you are using Office 2016, and then the CAT lab is 365. When you go to the office, they are also using Office 2013. Now, there will be a lot of compatibility issue because when you save your work in the lab, that you save it in 365, and you want them to print something for you at the office, meanwhile they are using Office 2013. That one will not be possible. So they need to have the same at the school, the same version. That's what we call the standardization. You can also export or import, or sometimes we call it save as. Like right now, I'm having this Microsoft Word. That's why in most cases, I don't share my work. I send it in PDF. So I can export it to PDF so that everybody can use it. So save as type, then I choose PDF, then I'll be able to save it so that everybody can use that particular PDF. Right. So that is one way of solving compatibility issues. Again, you can also solve that. We can also save it in the lower version. Like if you go to File, Save As, then instead of the word .docx, you can save it in a lower version. That is the 2097 to 2003. So these are the things that you can use to remove some of the compatibility issues. Like some offices, you will see the .odt, which is open document text. So when you have such document, it's only text. You have to save it as Microsoft Word format. That is a way of solving compatibility issues. Right. Somebody might also say maybe you can also update. when you update, there's a difference between update and then upgrade. Update is the same software, you are not upgrading. So updating can sometimes also solve compatibility issues. So they are not the same update. So when you update, you are having new features on the computer or on the software. But then when you upgrade, you are going to the next or the higher version. So you can also update your software to solve compatibility issues. Right. Now, the other one is cabled and wireless connection. In most cases, they can ask you to differentiate between cabled and wireless connections. Cabled like USB or HDMI cables, they are stable, and then they are cluttered, meaning that they have wires around. They get power from the computer and less prone to interferences. But in the wireless, they are flexible or mobile, less clutter, and then use batteries also, more prone or interferences. Right. When you are far from it, they lose also the connectivity. So they are not stable also. So they can ask you to compare or maybe advantages of wireless connection over the cabled connection. And now this one, we are talking about wireless devices. It can be different wireless devices or cable devices. Like for instance, wireless mouse, wireless speaker, wireless projector. They can be specific also, but then the advantages and disadvantages are the same. Right. Then let's also look at different ports and connectors. Like for instance, the NFC, near field communication. They work or transfer files by bringing them in close proximity or tapping devices. So the NFC, they must be close to each other before they will transfer data. So that's the definition of NFC. And they are mainly common in tap to pay. If you go to shops like Pick and Pay and other shops, the tap to pay that we normally use our cards to pay, they use NFC technology, different access card, and then contactless sharing. These are the uses of NFC. Then RFID, radio frequency identification. They use radio waves to identify and track objects with text. Example is the inventory tracking. If you go to most of these shops, they also have those texts. And then also tracking devices, e-tolls, they also use it. And even runners, athletes, runners, they put that track. Runners also, they can use that kind of text so that these runners to determine their position. Or even when they are going for long distance running, they can use that one to check whether no one is cheating or who crossed first. So these are some of the things that we can use RFID for. Right. And then Bluetooth. Bluetooth is short-range wireless technology for exchanging data. So Bluetooth is a short range, but then it cannot take a lot of data as compared to the NFC. Then examples that we can use Bluetooth will be headphones, like the wireless keyboard, speakers, and others. Right. So you need to know some of these things and applications of them. They can ask you some of these questions also. Then the system and then the minimum requirement. Now, the minimum requirement is the lowest hardware or software. That's the first keyword. The first keyword, the lowest hardware or software specification needed for an application to work. Now, a typical example is this. You want to install Office 365. What are the lowest hardware or software that you need? Let's say they will tell you Office 365 will need 6 GB RAM, They will say before you can install, it will also need 2.5 gigahertz CPU, and then maybe it will also need, those are the minimum requirement that they need. They can also tell you it needs maybe Windows 10 and above. Now, these are called the minimum that you need. But when it comes to the recommended one, for it to work at its full potential, or for you to enjoy using 365 so that it doesn't freeze, it works at the best performance, we call it the recommended. So these are the hardware or the software specification needed for the software to work at its full potential or smooth performance. For instance, the 365 again, for it to work 365, for you to enjoy working and saving it online and others, they can tell you maybe you need 16 gig RAM, and then you need Windows, maybe Windows 10 and above, or Windows 11. So these are the recommended one. A typical example is when you are playing games, you want to install games. There are certain games like Steam. Steam games, to be difficult to install them on a normal laptop or computer. So you need a higher graphic processing unit, and then you need also CPU speed must be faster and others. So that's the recommended one that you need. So you need to know the difference between recommended and then minimum system requirement. Right. Then also comparing power supply unit versus the UPS. Like we said, the power supply unit, they are inside the computer. That supply permanent source of power to the computer. And then the UPS, uninterruptible power supply, they are external, which is backup power. They are not inside the computer or the computing device. They are external that you connect to your computer, and they give a backup power to the computer. Right. In case the power goes off, so that one will have a constant supply of power. Then you must also look out for the surge protectors, battery with the inverters. You can also use it as an alternative to the UPS. So if they ask you how you can protect your work from being lost when the power goes off, you can also mention surge protectors and then the battery with inverters. Right now, let's move on to the other ones also. We have to also go on to the next one, like the Office 365, other software that we are going to discuss, like what is a software, types of softwares, and then the license agreement. So what we discussed were all about hardware and general concept. Then we also have software, which is the set of instructions controlling the hardware. And then the graphical user interface to interact with the operating system. For instance, the menus that you click, the buttons, and then either changing all those things on the screen, like on your screen, deleting and all those menus and buttons that you can click to interact with the operating system. That's the graphical user interface. Now, software has two categories, or I can say three categories. The system software, which is the software that manage the hardware. And then the application software for performing a specific task, like for instance, the Word and then others. So you need to know, maybe they can ask you to differentiate between them. Then also license agreement and then Creative Commons. Now the Creative Commons license is the one that allow people to share specific softwares or work under certain conditions. Like for instance, if you go to YouTube and people's work, you can have access to them, or maybe other softwares, but then there should be some conditions that you have to respect by not sharing the work to other people as if it is your own. You need to take note of that. Then the driver, like we said, is a utility program which help operating system to communicate with the hardware. An example is the printer driver or print driver, printer driver. We also have the graphic card driver, sound card driver. They assist the computers to be able to work. And these days, we don't talk about plug and play. Plug and play, now we are talking about the auto configuration. Auto configuration. This is a new term that they ask, not plug and play. Plug and play is not examinable these days. Again, now auto configuration is the same as plug and play. That is whereby operating system detect new devices. Like you connect your smartphone and it's been able to detect automatically. That is what we call the auto configuration. Then the utility programs like defragmenter, which is a utility tool that rearranges scattered files in order to speed up the computer. We have defragmentation, and then we also have optimize. But then optimize is only done on SSD. It's on SSD. Then defragmenter is for HDD. Why do we say so? Because SSD, they are not normally, files are not mostly fragmented or scattered, and as compared to defragmentation. So as compared to the HDD, they are scattered because of the nature, and then to rearrange them so that the computer will move smoothly or speed up its processing, you need to use what we call the defragmenter. But then for SSD, we normally use optimize. So right now, if I search for optimize, it gives me here defragment and then optimize drive. Defragment and then optimize drive. So because I am using SSD for my laptop, you see optimize, you don't see defragmenter. So take note. You can see here solid state drive. This is solid state drive. So if I wanted to perform better, to run more effectively, and to analyze them to find out if they need to be optimized or not, then I will just click on optimize, then it will do that for me. But then if you're using HDD, we don't use the optimize, we use what we call the defragmenter. So take note of that. These are the utility softwares that are part of the operating system. And this cleanup, which is the utility that delays unnecessary files in order to free up space. Like you mostly find this one in your smartphones, that you must delete to clean space. So that's the disk cleanup. And backup is making copies of files in case you accidentally delete them. So backup is a temporary, but then archive is a long term. So the archive, you make a long-term backup or copies for history or anything. Let's say you have old pictures that you want to keep them somewhere, or let's say your marks from grade 1, grade 2, then the school will keep them on a CD or any storage medium. So that's archive, which is different from backup. Backup can be you make it today, and then tomorrow maybe you delete it, then you go for it. You must take note of these two. Functions of operating system, they normally ask this. Providing graphical user interface, at least you must know 2 or 3. They manage hardware or software or files. They provide security also, like login, password. They also provide these utilities and others. So you must know at least 2 or 3 of the, they always ask you to give maybe 2. Then the file management compression, like when you compress, you reduce the size of the file, and then you decompress to extract it also. Now, compression software, there are so many formats like WinZip, .zip, RAR, and then 7Z. is also example of it. They can ask you to give some of the file format of the compression software. And then we also have software installation. When you are installing software, what kind of medium can you install from? Either you install online, or you install from flash drive or CD, or you can also install from network drives. There might be a software on a server or network drive that you can also install from it. So these are ways of installing software. And then how to update software, bug, patch, service pack, and others. Now, a bug is a software error. And then the patch is an update that fixes a bug. Then the service pack, group of patches over a certain period of time. Like for instance, maybe in 6 months, then we call it service pack. Windows used to have service pack 1, service pack 2, like that, before they came with the Windows 10 and Windows 11. Then the version of a software, the software type that has a new feature, that's the version of a software. Now, when you have new features like 365 is a version of Microsoft Office, which has MS365, which has MS365, which has new features. Like for instance, it's having some functions in spreadsheet like if, lookup, and others, which you cannot find it in other versions also. So some of these are what you call the versions. When you increase or you upgrade, you get new features from it. Right. So you need to know this. And how do you do these backups and others like scheduler and others? You need to know some of these definitions. Then the web-based versus installed application, software that you can use online, we call it web-based, or sometimes we call it online software. They depend on internet. If you don't have internet, you cannot use it. Then they also update automatically, less features, back up automatically, software access anytime, anywhere, easier collaboration, and easier to share with others. So these are some of the advantages, but then the disadvantages are that you need a faster internet connectivity. Then the installed application, they are kept on the local disk. They have more features and not internet dependent. Like this one here, I installed a 365. It has more features. If you use 365 on the internet, there are other features that might not be available to you. Like, so here you have more features like that. Now, software for users with disability, we will look at that also. Software accessibility features like speech to text, screen readers, captions, subtitles, magnifier, on-screen keyboard. They can ask you to give based on a specific user, which I've also elaborated them down here. We are going to discuss it also. And then the risk of flawed software. Flawed software is the software with a bug, error. Now, if a software is having an error, what kind of consequences might you, or the risk that you might encounter? Crashes, data loss, vulnerable to malware and cyber attacks, or security issues. Now, classifying software also based on the license, like we have the freeware, whereby you can use it for free. Use a software for free, like using Microsoft, Microsoft is not for free. Using maybe any software from your, like some browsers are for free. You can download and use it for free. Proprietary software, they are paid. They are not for free. And then the source code is not available to you. Like this 365, we buy it, and then you cannot edit the source code. Then FOSS, which is free open source software. FOSS stands for free open source software. They are software that can be freely used. They can be modified in terms of the source code. Then you make changes. Like Linux is one example of the false software. Java is also one example. Shareware is a trial software that you can use for a specific period of time. Then after that, you pay or you buy it. Like for instance, you can use for 3 months or 1 month, sometimes even 1 week. You call it trial software. And then the standalone software, the software that comes as one, and then integrated software, they comes as a bundle. There are so many that are put together. There's no way that they are going to ask you to differentiate between these two, but then they might ask you to maybe explain one, not to differentiate. The new exam guideline, it is stipulated there. Then the metadata, additional information about the data or file. For instance, we have the author, the file type, the date created, and others. If you go to the other files like this, when you right click and you go to the properties, it's going to give you the metadata. When you go to the details, you can see the name, the type, the folder, and others. So these are the other properties of the file. The date modified, you can find all of them there. So these are the properties of the file. Or you can even, from Microsoft Word, you can get those properties from file info. Then you see all these properties. These are the metadata, the text, the title, the words, the categories. There are so many of them that you can have. Right. And then also types of computer users, personal user, SOHO, and others. The personal user, person who use computers at their home for entertainment or personal tasks like typing. A SOHO, they use computers at their business, small business, or in a small setup. And then the mobile user, they rely on portable device like laptops, tablet, then on the move. So you must know how to define each of them and what are the some of the softwares and hardware that each user might also need. Power user, they need a high-end performance computers, mostly for video editing, gaming, and programming. All those ones, architects, those people, they are called power users. Enterprise users are the large organizations whereby individuals use their computers. Like in the school setup, the computer that we have in the school is enterprise user if they are connected to the network. And if you go to other businesses, they are also using the computers also there. Then we talk about the types of computing devices like desktop computer is stationary. They are good performance. They are used in offices and our homes. Laptops, why do we need laptop instead of desktop? They are portable. They can ask you to differentiate that. Battery powered, suitable for mobile use. That means you can move around. Tablet, smaller size, touch screen is also available and for multimedia browsing. And then smartphones also is handheld. They combine multiple functions also together. A server, more powerful computer, which shares resources to client computers. Mainframe and supercomputer, those are the powerful computers, mostly for large calculations and the scientific calculations. Then embedded, we talk about them. Single purpose, wearable devices, we discuss also. The devices that we wear on our body. Then thin client and then fat client computer. There was a year that they asked that question in a scenario base. The thin client computers, some computers are using, or some schools are using thin client computers. They are very small sizes that are connected to the server. So they are minimal hardware relying on a network server for resources. Then the fat client computer, those big computers that are in other computers, they are not small, they are big ones that they can also be connected to a network. Then we need to also know integration of input modes to enhance productivity. That is whereby you use multiple ways used to enter data or comment into the device. For example, if you go to Pick and Pay, they can use touch screen to type. They can also use keyboard to also type. If the touch screen is not working, they can use the keyboard. If the keyboard is also not working, they can use the barcode scanner to scan it also. So you have to know this. A typical example is the touch screen versus the keyboard that you might have on your smartphones or maybe laptop. The two-in-one laptops, you might have the one that you can touch, and then you can also use the keyboard. So if your keyboard is giving you problem, you can use the touch screen. And then voice input versus also typing is also another example of integration of input mode to enhance productivity. Then, like I discussed earlier, the disability types and then the hardware and software that they might need. Visually impaired, they will need screen reader device. If they are talking about hardware, you don't mention the software. If they are talking about software, screen reader is acceptable, but hardware, we have screen reader devices also, or braille display. We have braille keyboard. We also have audio output devices like headphones. We have the magnification devices. We have the tactile keyboard. We have the braille printers also. These are the devices for someone who have blind or low vision, visually impaired. Now, hearing impaired, what are some of the devices that they need? They need visual alert system or devices. Don't just mention visual alert. Here, the question is talking about the hardware devices. They also have captioning devices. There's a captioning software and then captioning devices. The captioning devices, the wearable devices that they can wear, that will do or maybe convert that one for them into text. They are wearable devices that are available. Then we also have the hearing aids or listening devices. Then the mobility or the motor disability, ergonomic keyboard or adaptive keyboard. We have the foot pedals or switches, trackballs, and then joysticks and adapted mice also. Voice control devices, microphone, or sip and puff. These are some of the devices for that type of user. And then we also have here cognitive one, specialized input devices that they give them like screen readers and text-to-speech devices. So these are some of the hardware devices for different disability types that you have to take note. Now, that brings to an end of the system technologies. There was one important thing that I forgot about. I think I will discuss it there, keylogger. By keylogger, they can also ask it in the social implications. So we will discuss it also. These are the hardware or software that record keystroke. So it can also be here. So they are hardware or software keystrokes. So that's the keylogger. You need to also know that. Right, let me check if there's no question. Then I'll move straight to network and then internet technologies. After the lesson, I will break them down also. Let's check if there are no questions. Someone say, is it safe to study the last push? Yes, you can with this note here. It is compiled from your ATP and everything on what to use to study, because the exam asks questions from different resources and not from textbook. Yeah, that is why we are not using textbooks here. We focus on ATP and exam guideline. The examiners cannot ask you questions outside the exam guideline. Only that they ask it in a form. Remember, you are doing computer applications technology. they can let you apply it, but then the questions, the topics are the same. The topics are the same. So as you can see here, I have a number of questions here that I also indicated. You can see here, these are sampled questions based on what I've discussed. Areas where computers can save money, financial benefits, so they can ask you that. Examples of where computer ensure accuracy, resources saved, how VoIP save money. So these are talking about how we can save money, but then they ask it in different ways. Resources saved through computers, papers, and others. Now, when it comes to this one, essential computer, like we discussed it, CPU, RAM, and then GPU, meaning of Linux platform. I talk about it like Linux platform is they run on an operating system, which is the and a typical example of free open source software. Difference between server and ordinary PC. So you can see they ask it in a different way. Advantages of laptops over desktop, we discussed it. Also, power user definition. Convergence and advantages and disadvantages of convergence. These are questions from previous question papers. It is not just that I've just created. I pick it from different or sampled question papers. Definition of input mode. And then, so you can see definition of metadata, examples of metadata, difference between read-only and hidden files. Read-only, the file can be viewed. This question came last year. The file can be viewed but not edited. Hidden files, they are not visible to users, usually for system and security purpose. This was last year question paper. Examples of metadata was also last year question paper. Importance of offline backup. Why do you have to backup offline? You can get access to without internet, faster to restore, protection against ransomware and other malwares also. But here is ransomware, no subscription needed. Look at the way I gave the answers also, the keywords. You don't have to write too much. Keywords are very important. Why backup is not on the same location? Because of theft, or maybe your work or your computer might crash or others, so you don't put it on the same location. Benefit of cloud storage: scalable, it saves space on the local device, data safety, easier sharing and collaboration. File extension for compressed files, zip, ref, Z7-zip, and others. You know, I've talked about all this in the explanation, but then the questions are from that also. Disadvantages of 3D printer: slow process, it gives films or different order of file smell, low strength, and then expensive also to use, job losses and others. Definition of 3D printer, uses of 3D printer. You need to know some of these content also. Functions of operating system. They keep on asking that type of question. Providing basic security, providing GUI and others. What is utility software and examples also. Definition of defragmentation. Last year question paper, it was there. They asked that question. Definition of archive, long term, ways to reduce electricity usage, and then why notebook is not used these days, reason for updating operating system to fix bug, improve security, and compatibility issues. A difference between patch and service pack, definition of a software version, new features, specific release of a software indicating update or new features. So you can see definition of a scheduler is operating system utility software which manage and schedule tasks or program to run automatically at different times. They can ask you this type of question. Risk of that: steps to close and non-responding applications using task manager, by pressing Ctrl Alt Delete and then use Task Manager, or you right click and choose Task Manager, then you go to End Task. So some of these things, why open Task Manager if slow? To see the running processes and ending the Task Manager. Advantages of touch screen. So these are sample questions, please. You can see here output devices for disabled users. How to reduce data usage during video calls, switch off videos and others. So there's no way that they're going to ask questions outside your scope. Reasons for reducing the files, to save space for easier emails and others. So all these criteria for selecting a printer. What are some of the factors to consider when selecting a printer? They like asking this type of questions. That is speed, the quality or the resolution, the paper type, durability, the size of the printer, the color depth, the connectivity, and the compatibility issues. Then what is printer queue? That is storing, printing, or multiple jobs in a queue. And then they send the jobs to the printer in certain order, which at the printer queue you can delete or pause or give a prioritized job, which one should be printed first. So they can ask you some of these questions, what you have to do at the printer queue. Then spooling. Spooling is different from spoofing. I saw some learners, there was a time we gave them questions, they asked spooling, but they were answering spoofing. Spooling is a process of storing print jobs temporarily on a printer before they store. So when you send the printer job, they are kept in a specific place called printer queue. So that place is called the spooling or spooler. They store it temporarily there. And then what can you do at the spooler? You can view, you can pause, you can cancel, reorder, and restart the job. They can ask you this type of questions also. Ways to connect printers, either through USB or Wi-Fi. What's the default printer meaning? And then green computing, how to ensure green computing. Printing only when necessary. Print duplex, that's double-sided. Print multiple pages per sheet. Use print preview, recycle paper, and others. Benefit of UPS. UPS, they give a temporary power. They prevent data loss, surge protection, and others. Now, add-ons, extension, drivers, all these questions, we have addressed them in the notes also. Causes of application not working, and then reason for automatic update or backup. It saves time, it's done regularly, and then also backup policies, specific location and medium, synchronization, you must know it, backward compatibility, like we just discussed it, telecommuting, working from home, recommended, and others. All these questions, digital divide, all these questions were addressed in the notes. So please, all that I will ask you is that study the notes first. After that, then you come and use this question and answer. Look at the way I answered them. Monitor specification, aspect to consider, aspect ratio, contrast ratio, refresh rate. You need to know all of them, these questions also. And then when you are done with them, there are a number of questions. There are a number of the NFC VR, not enough space is going to assist you. All these questions were addressed. So please, I will urge you to use these question and answers together with the notes, the one that I'm discussing with you right now. Right, if there are no questions, we will move straight to network and then internet technologies, what you should look out for. Now, network and internet technologies. The first part is basic network, the definition of a network, connection of two or more computers or computing devices to share resources. Very important. Aims and objectives of a network: facilitate communication, data sharing, and centralized data. But the benefits are that, or the advantages: sharing hardware and software, internet access, data exchange or transfer, easier collaboration, and so many. At least you need to know 2 of them. Then disadvantages of network: security risk. Do not explain yourself, just say security risk or security issues. Privacy issues. Don't explain what the privacy issue is, and do not be writing hacking and what. Just say security concerns or security issues whenever they ask disadvantages of network. Right. Then different types of network, like the local area network, at the home, limited in a small geographical area. Again, global network. When WiMAX, which stands for Worldwide Interoperability for Microwave Access. That is WiMAX, which is a long range, or you can say the maximum or long distance wireless connection, which we normally find it in cities or rural areas where broadband is not available. For instance, if you go to certain places, towns, there are no broadband, ADSL and SDSL. These service providers, they give room for the WiMAX so that they can cover in that city. And then Wi-Fi is a short range, which is convenient and high convenience wireless connection. LTE, which is 4G and 5G. They are mobile connections, wide area coverage, and high speed, which support free movement also. They are for mobile devices. And then hotspot, it's a wireless connection at a public place. So when they ask you to define the term hotspot, wireless connection at public places. And then you need to also know the network component. If you want to set up a network, what are some of the components that you need? Like modem. A modem is a device that connects computers to internet through telephone lines. Please be careful. They will never ask you to compare modem and then a router. That one is not in the, according to the exam guideline, it shouldn't be examinable. But they can ask you to define one of them, not to compare them. A router is a device that connects networks together. The router connects networks together. A switch connects multiple computers within a local area network. So a switch connects computers together. A router connects networks together. And then a modem connects a computer to internet. So take note of the difference between these 3. And then the NIC, network interface controller or card, which is a hardware component that allows devices to connect to a network. Please, the definition hardware component is very important. It is not a device. I'm not saying I must say it's not external device. It is inbuilt. It is inside your computer, laptop, which is connected to the motherboard. And then it allows you to connect to a network. And we have the wireless NIC and then the cabled NIC or wired NIC. So they are part of the computer. It's connected to the motherboard. And then we have the web access point, wireless access point, which is a device that allows wireless devices to connect to a network. So they make sure that you are able to connect to wireless network, and then we call it wireless access point. Then the communication medium, like this one here, we have the wired and the wireless communication medium. Like we said, the data is transmitted through physical cables, like copper wires, UTP, fiber cables. And then the advantages of the wired ones are they are stable and they give faster speed. They are more secured from interferences and less signal loss, the cabled network. But then the wireless one, the disadvantage is that the cabled one, they are expensive to install and limited mobility. You cannot move around like ADSL or fiber optic. You can't move it from your house to your school. and can be damaged easily, the cables. But the wireless one, they are transmitted through radio waves or microwaves, like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC, LTE, and then the satellite. These are the wireless communication medium. They are flexible and mobile, easy to install. That's the advantage. They can connect to many devices. So if they ask you to give advantages of wireless communication, these are the advantages. They can connect to so many devices at the same time. But the disadvantages are that they are less secured, interferences, and then they are also slow. Signals can be lost also. So you need to take note of these as well. Right. And then the wireless standard 802.11, it stands for the wireless communication network, Wi-Fi standard. So whenever you see the 802.11, that means wireless protocol. It can be in a theory or they can ask you to define it. They can ask you to explain the ABGN. It is not examinable. These are the speed, but they cannot ask you to define them. And NFC and LTE, we have talked about it. LTE is a long-range mobile internet for 4G. Then you must also know the difference between broadband and the bandwidth. Broadband is a high-speed internet connectivity. Examples ADSL, SDSL, 4G, and others. But the bandwidth is amount of data transfer from one point to another. Amount of data transfer from one point to another. So they can ask you to explain what a bandwidth is. The keyword amount of data transfer from one point to another. That to get the full math. So the bandwidth is the amount of data. Broadband is type of internet connectivity. Right. And examples of broadband are listed over here. And then you need to know the differences also. ADSL, which stands for asymmetric digital subscriber line. They are a type of broadband or internet connectivity that use telephone lines. And then ADSL, the download speed is faster than the upload speed. Take note. And ADSL is mostly found in our homes. For the internet, you mostly find it in our home, or some schools also use ADSL. Then the symmetric digital subscriber line, which is similar to ADSL, but then here, when I say similar, I mean that they use telephone lines. So the similar means they use telephone lines, but the upload and the download speed are equal. And then they are used by businesses. Like in schools, when we are connecting at the same time, we are using BYOD. We need SDSL instead of ADSL. And then the long-term evolution, 4G. They are high-speed mobile internet supporting high-definition videos and others. Like most of the service providers give 4G in most cities in South Africa. 5G is the fifth generation, which is the newest one, which is faster than the 4G. So you must take note of that. And again, you need to know this. The service providers, which is the company that provides services to the internet, they can apply certain policies on their services, the internet that they give you. And the first policy is called throttling. This is whereby an ISP intentionally, here, they intentionally slow down your internet speed. So those are the definition, the keywords. After you have used too much data or during network congestions. So in the scenario base, they can ask you that question. Why will an ISP throttle people or their customers? Normally they do that when you have reached or you have used so many data for cap, for uncapped. So they don't do throttling on cap. They do throttling on uncapped. Or when there's a network congestion, they can also reduce your speed. So take note, throttling is mostly done, mostly applied to cap kept services. So not kept, and kept services. Because why will an ISP trust kept? Because even if you use kept and then your data is finished, they know that you definitely cannot do without data. You have to buy again. So they don't have to reduce the speed. They have to keep on increasing your speed so that you finish your data quickly. So take note of that. Shaping, where an ISP prioritize certain internet services. In other words, they give priority or they give other services some kind of preferences in terms of the speed over others. For instance, the email, the speed when you're using email or browsing, it will be faster. When you're using streaming, then the speed will be slower. So they use that one to manage network performance and shape equal preferences given to all services. The speed remains the same. Whether you are streaming or you are browsing or you are using emails, they remain the same. Fair Use Policy, FUP. These are the rules an ISP set to prevent heavy users from overusing their data so that all customers get a fair access to the network. They apply this one to make sure that every customer, like MTN will say that every customer must get a good service. So they can apply certain policies, let's say by maybe throttling you or putting certain things at a certain time so that everybody will have a better service. We call it FUP. Then the concept of kept and kept data bundle and others, you need to know them also. They can ask you to differentiate them. Kept is a fixed data limit if they ask you to define it. That's the short definition, the keyword fixed data limit. And then once you reach it, your internet connection may be slow or it should stop. Then unkept, no fixed data limit, but the speed may be throttling or throttled after or reduced after high usage. Like I said, unkept, they apply throttling to unkept. If you use it for a lot of bandwidth, then they will now reduce your speed. Hard kept, internet stop completely once the data limit is reached. You must buy more data. Hard kept, when your data is finished, all the internet services will stop. Soft kept, after your data is rich, you can still browse, but at a reduced speed. Or you can use certain services, but then they reduce the speed for you. We call it soft kept. Then the bundle is a prepaid data package with a fixed amount of data. When it is finished, you must top up. So there's a difference between bundle and kept. Kept, normally, you sign a contract with them. Let's say they give you 10 gig for 1 month or 20 gig for 2 months. They don't add the bundle. It comes with also maybe calling and others. They add them maybe 20 minutes call per day and then 10 gig. That's the bundle. They are combined together. Right. Now, IoT, Internet of Things. It is whereby computers or devices are connected to the internet to exchange data automatically. So you cannot just say devices connected to the internet. What do they do when they connect to the internet? They exchange data automatically. Devices like smart homes, like your light, smart fridge, and alarm systems, whereby you can connect your alarm. You can be somewhere and then you control and you switch on your alarm through the internet, or your gate might be having connected to the internet. You can control it from afar when you're connected to the internet, or security fence, whereby you switch the one that has the electric, you can switch it on and then off. All these are smart technology, that's Internet of Things. Smart watches also, smart traffic light, and sensors also. So these are all examples of the IoT. Advantages are that they improve efficiency, remote control, automation, and then also monitoring from afar. Like your cameras will be connected to the internet, then you now check it on your laptop. So all these or the alarm systems also, these are part of the IoT. Now, IoT and these new technologies are part of what we call fourth industrial revolution. So the 4IR is a combination of IoT, AI, robots, big data, cloud computing, and 3D printing all put together. So the definition is the digitization or the digital transformation where physical systems are combined or integrated with the digital and biological technologies. Or you can just say it's a combination of IoTs, AI, robots, and others to put together. So you can just give just short definition. Right. So 4IR is the automation with the smart technologies put together. But then the advantages are that they increase productivity and efficiency like the IoT and artificial intelligence. They create new jobs and then they lead to smart factories and others. But the disadvantages are there. You know how the 4IR people are coming out with so many things. They might have its own ethics. But the 5IR, they add upon the 4IR, but then they focus on human-machine collaboration. So they have the 4IR, and then they add the human and the machine together. That's the 5IR. So 5IR, to remember these two, is the human together with the 4IR put together. The 4IR is a combination of the smart technologies and automation. So that you'll be able to compare them. They can ask you that type of questions. 5IR technologies like AI working alongside human beings, focusing on ethics and sustainability. Right. You need to know the definitions also. Data transmission speed, which is measured in megabit per second or bit per second. The speed at which data travels from one point to another. And also to compare internet, intranet, and extranet. Internet is a public network which is accessible by anyone, provided you have connectivity. And the internet, they need maybe username and password sometimes to get into it. You need firewall to filter certain traffic, and then via antivirus also. Then example is using internet to search or email or to watch YouTube. But the intranet is a private network. It is restricted to an organization or a certain company. Only the employees or members of the organization can have access to it. We call it the intranet. And they will need the login details, firewall to block outsiders, access right, maybe the top managers can see certain things. Those who are the employees, you can see other places also. But if you are far from the organization's workplace, then you need what we call virtual private network, which will allow you to secure remote access. Let's say I leave my school and then I want to capture marks, then I go home. I need what we call the VPN, virtual private network, to be able to connect. Examples of the VPN are these. I thought I was having VPN here, but I don't have. You can have 40 clients and others, whereby you need to log in. After logging in, then you'll be able to access the company's resources and other things. So that's the VPN for intranet. Example of the intranet can be in schools for different company internal portals or website. Extranet, it is similar to the intranet, but the control and external access to part of the intranet. In other words, they give certain aspects to external people. Like for instance, the school, selected external users, maybe the parents can have access to maybe ordering uniform and then communicating with teachers, or you can also have maybe company suppliers can also have access to it. So that's extranet. Extranet, we need VPN to prevent external source people, firewalls also. So you must know the difference between intra, extra, and then internet, these three. And then internet address, which is the unique identifier to website, and then devices on the computer, the IP addresses. www, collection of web pages accessible through the browsers. A browser, which is the software to access websites, examples Chrome. But then the search engine is a website to find information online, like Google and then Yahoo and others. Comparing downloading and uploading and streaming. When you download, you receive data from the server to the local computer. Upload, data is sent to the remote server. And streaming, watch or play back live. When you are watching or play back something live, that is streaming. Now, ISP, Internet Service Provider, like we said earlier, they are businesses or companies that provide internet access at a cost. They are not for free. Like MTN, Vodacom. Example is MTN, Vodacom, MWeb, and others. They are all sort of service providers. They can host your website. They can help you to connect to the internet. They provide email and web hosting and cloud services. They also filter other technical offers, or they can filter also for you. You can filter spam and others. What are the factors that you need to consider when choosing an ISP? The first thing to consider the speed of the connectivity. You must also consider the pricing or the cost plans, monthly fee, installation cost, and data limits. You must also consider the services that they give you. Are they going to do throttling, or are they going to give you shape or unshape? You must consider all those. And you must also consider this called the coverage area. Is it at your area or not? Streaming, we talk about that one also, like using Netflix and then YouTube and others watching live, like what we are doing now, is part of streaming. Now, government internet services. These are the digital resources provided by our government for public access, which ensure that citizens can have access to services and information online. Now, we have e-government portals. We have South African government website, online text filing, e-filing, and service applications like applying for your ID online, Home Affairs, and other services. Now, the disadvantages are that digital divide, the gap between those who have access to the internet and those who do not have access to internet. Digital divide is a very big problem when it comes to the e-government services. There are some places like Tamasikwa and other places, when you go there, you have challenges with the network. So imagine you are there, then you want to watch these videos, or maybe you are there, you want to apply for your ID, it will not be possible. So these are some of the challenges we call digital divide, the gap between those who have access and those who don't have access. Security risk also, security issues, resistant to change. There are some people who don't want to change. They still want to use the manual one also. Cost implication or implementation. You have to do both the hardware one, or what do you call it, the manual one, by having the copies, and then you have to do the online and then do them at the same time. Privacy concerns also, hacking and others. So you have to also talk about that. Now, Different online applications, you must know them, like VoIP, blog, social media. You can check some of the questions that they ask over the advantages and then disadvantages. Telecommuting, that is working from home, whereby employees are allowed to work from home. Now, for telecommuting, you need to use video conferencing tools like Zoom or Teams to also access the company's intranet. You need VPN. Then also cloud services tools like Google Workspace or 365. You need them to have telecommuting or remote work. Now, advantages are that they save commuting time and cost. Instead of it to go to the workplace, it will save you time and then also cost. Then, flexible working hours, access to global talent and others, and then reduce office space requirements. Disadvantages, they require reliable or fast internet connectivity, and then also security risk, and even digital divide. Let's say where you are staying, there's a problem with the network connectivity. So that can also affect telecommuting. Digital communication, e-communication, exchanging of information electronically, like using emails, video conference, and others. And then we have different communication devices like smartphones, webcam, microphones. Then you need to also know these emails, priorities, flagging. When you say priority, like last year question paper, marking emails as high, normal, or to show that it is important. Flagging is for a follow-up, to track important tasks for a follow-up. And we have distribution list, group of email address that allows one to send emails to many recipients at the same time. We call it distribution list. And we have the message rule, which automatically organizes incoming emails based on certain criteria, whether the subject, the keywords, the sender, and others. That's the message rule. It allows you to organize your thing or filter them. You need to know this. They can ask you that question. Last year, they asked to differentiate between priority and then flagging, these two. And most learners could not answer them. Right. Then, like I said earlier, the social media, video conferencing tools, social media also, sharing information, add-on or extension. That is the small software tools which enhance browser functionality. It's a software which gives additional functionality to a browser, like AdBlock, and then Grammarly is also another example of extension or add-on. URL shortener. They create a short link from a long URL for easier sharing. You can easier share or you can type. So easier shared, easy to type or remember. So they can ask you to give advantages of URL shortener. It will be easier to type, easier to remember, and easier to share also. A typical example is this one, tiny URL or bit.ly. But then its disadvantages are that sometimes they see it as maybe malware. Can be seen as malware or flag as malware. So that's a disadvantage. Sometimes you want to go it and most networks will block it. And then also security risk. Security risk, that's the disadvantages of URL shortener. Right, tab browsing, allowing multiple web pages to be open in one web window. That makes it navigation to be easier. Like in Chrome, like you see here, multiple one can be open, multiple tabs to be open that you can close. We call it tab browsing. It's easier to navigate and then multitask also, easier to multitask. Last year question paper, they asked advantages of tab browsing also. So you need to take note of that. Now, website usability and accessibility. When you are using a website, you must ensure that it's easier to navigate, the factors to consider, readable and usable by all users. That is by having this clear layout, alt text for those with the visual impairment, and then readable font also. So these are the factors you need to consider. Then we also have evaluating a website. There are two different things. Evaluating and then usability are not the same. Sometimes learners get confused. When you are evaluating a website source, you must consider the accuracy, the authority, the credibility, the objectivity, and others. Objectivity. That is when you are evaluating the web pages or the website sources. But then here you are evaluating the website, whether it's suitable or not. That's when you look at the font, that's the layout. Right. That is all about internet and network. And then when we check some of the questions there, like I listed also here, don't forget to, after studying, then you go through them. Definition of internet, worldwide connection of the network, reason why we use network or internet, sharing of resources, purpose of when they facilitate sharing resources, definition of IoT, functions of ISP, factors to consider when choosing ISP, like we said, availability, the type of connection, the speed, whether capped, the cost, and others. Then definition of broadband, high-speed internet connection, examples that needs broadband, like streaming, gaming, and others. Bandwidth definition, throttling, meaning of cap, and others. Limitations of ADSL, and then advantages of ADSL. They use telephone lines, built-in Wi-Fi, stable connectivity, and cheaper price as compared to other ones. Disadvantages are that they are not mobile solution, not everywhere. You can't find it everywhere. And then sometimes there can be interferences also. Difference between Wi-Fi and then hotspot, cloud storage advantages and disadvantages also. Like you see, all this we have discussed. These are some of the questions from previous question papers. Disadvantages of instant messaging, antisocial behavior, cyber stalking, and others. Functions of VoIP, and then online storage synchronization. FTP, like I said, is not examinable anymore, so don't consider that. That's why I took it out. Disadvantage of online sharing, limited space. Great computing, advantages of e-government, easier to access information, improve communication, availability anytime. They promote green computing also, and then disadvantages. So you can see whatever that we have discussed, you get them from these questions. Blog, benefit of email calendar, citizen journalism, that is ordinary citizens share or report news on blogs. That is called citizen journalism. And then we have news blog sites that are available, podcast, downloadable audio file from the internet that you can, like MP3 format. Benefit of podcast, it saves paper and added podcast videos that are downloaded. Wiki, editable page or website, and they are being criticized because anyone can make changes to it. Pop-up definition, small window appearing so many times on a page. Web caching, that saves web data locally for faster loading time. And then information overload. When there's too much information to process effectively, we call it information overload. Now, how do you prevent it? You must filter. You must also sift the information and others. Virtual community, online group sharing or chat or interest. Example, WhatsApp group and others. We call it virtual communities. Now, so crowdfunding, we will talk about that later. Online funding for many users to support a specific cause. Advantages and disadvantages also, you need to know them. Wireless disadvantages, interferences, switch function. So all these questions here, we have catered for them. Creative Commons, plug in now, they call it add-on these days. Broadband advantages, aspect required for high definition streaming. If you are streaming for high definition, you need high bandwidth, low latency, and stable connectivity. Right, so all these are part of the internet connectivity, which can be up to about 25 marks also, because you'll find them also that side. So 25 marks. So you need to take note of that. Go through them after you study the concept. Go through them. Right. Now let's move straight to the third concept, which is the social implications. The social implications of using computers or networks. You must look out for the computer ethics, that the moral principles guiding the responsible use of computer, what you should do and what you should not do regarding the use of computers. Software piracy, copying, distributing software illegally, and then the license that protect those people. Ethical use of hardware, use ICT resources useful when you're using hardware computers. Ethical use, respecting people's privacy and others. Now, these are the concepts. Plagiarism, the act of copying someone's work or ideas as your own without giving credit. The keywords have been bolded. Take note of that. Example, when you copy text from maybe Wikipedia or other source without citing it, it is copyright. Then IP, which stands for intellectual property, which refers to the creation of the mind, like your own idea or inventions or designs that are protected by law. So when you create something from your own ideas, you are being protected. We call it intellectual property. Owners have exclusive right to use, sell, and then license these creations. So whenever you do something that is original, like my YouTube channel and others, it should protect that is my own ideas, right? So the software, the music and books and other things, the trademarks, we call it the intellectual property. Then the copyright, which is a type of intellectual property which gives the creators an exclusive right to reproduce, distribute, or perform or display their work. So this right gives those who created that thing or that idea to be able to sell or display or redo them. So they protect them from people from redistributing their work. And then Creative Commons, which is a license system and allows the creator to share work legally without or with certain conditions. Like for instance, when I have my book and then I share it, then I say, okay, when you are using it, do not make more copies or this or that. Those are the Creative Commons license that people must respect also. And then responsible behavior online, you need to know that you must respect people, use appropriate languages, avoid harm content, and stop cyberbullying and the cyber stalking. Digital footprint, those are the things where all your online activities, what you leave, the traces that can affect your image. We call it digital footprint. Then the POPI Act Protection of Personal Information Act, which is a South African law ensuring safe and lawful handling of personal data. So when people use your data without giving you acknowledgement, that is against the POPI Act, like taking people's picture and others. Cybercrime and penalties. If you commit cyber crimes, there are so many cyber crimes we are going to discuss. What are some of the penalties that you can be involved? Offenses like identity theft and phishing, you can have a lot of consequences. Acceptable user policies, those that guide the school what they must learners must do and what they cannot do. Like for instance, you are not supposed to maybe use memory stick or copy people's work without acknowledging them. All those policies called AUP. Then ergonomics is also part of this, which is designing workplace or equipment for comfort and efficiency. You must know the definition and ergonomic practices like correct postures, monitor height, rest breaks, to prevent injury like taking breaks and others. Repetitive strain injury, which is also common health issues from prolonged use of computers. And then green computing and e-waste. Environmentally friendly use of computers is green computing. And e-waste is when you discard electronic gadgets at a landfill called e-waste. You must know the definitions. Then power and then energy saving mode. If you are saving power, sleep mode, hibernate or automatic shutdown, energy saving, changing the brightness, using CPU or maybe using SSD instead of HDD. Those are energy saving things, turning off and other things that you need to do. Right. Then we go straight to the malwares and authentications. When you're authenticating, meaning that you are verifying the identity of the system before you grant access by using the password, the PIN, biometric access, and others. Now, authorization determines what resources that you can also use. For instance, admin versus the standard user's right. Now, if you're an admin, you can go through the server and others. But then if you are just an ordinary user, you don't have permission to go through certain servers. Right, then the malware, which is malicious software designed to disrupt, damage, and gain unauthorized access to a computer system. You must know the definition and different types of malware, like virus. They disrupt the normal function, they replicate and spread. You can say they disrupt. And then the worms are always replicating themselves. Trojan, they disguise themselves as a legitimate software. Spyware, a malware. All of them, if the question asks you to define it, start by saying it's a malware, because normally they give 1 mark for that. So a Trojan is a malware that disguised as a legitimate software. Spyware is a malware that monitor user activities. Ransomware is a malware that lock your file demanding payment before they release it. You need to know them also. And then antivirus software, what does it do? And then firewalls is a hardware or software that blocks or incoming traffic. You need to know them. Right. Then there are other various malware that you must also know, or cyber attack. We will talk about them. Data protection. How do you safeguard your data from corruption or unauthorized access? Example is encryption, strong password access right, antivirus protection. You can also have backup. You can back up your work. Now, backup is duplicating or creating files by using these external devices. Benefits of backup, you must know them also, and backup strategies. You must always offsite backup, or you must regularly backup also, and backup at a time that you are not busy. Those are the backup strategies. Now, physical security measures. Lock to prevent the hardware theft, like to lock your devices. By using cable locks. So here you can use cable locks. Cable lock devices, or you tie them. CCTV cameras, restrict access alarm systems also, and then biometric access. So restrict access, maybe using biometric. And then you can also use those burglars and others. You can chain them. There are so many ways of preventing that. Then the cyber security and social engineering. Now, social engineering, that is the manipulating people into revealing sensitive information. Those are the definitions, the keywords you must know. Examples of social engineering: phishing, farming, vishing, um, farming, baiting, pretexting. You must know them. Fraudulent emails. When you use email, clickjacking, spoofing. There are so many of them that they can ask you to define one of them. Right. So there are a lot of them that you have to know. Now, it could be emails, SMS, calls. So the fake email is called phishing, to deceive someone. Fake SMS is smishing. Fake video calls or voice calls called vishing. And then farming is link, fake link. So here you must know them. So fraudulent emails, let me just put them, call it phishing. We have fraudulent SMS, which is smishing. Fake emails or fake SMS. All of them, they use it to deceive people into getting sensitive information. Fake calls, we call it vishing. That voice calls. When they call you to deceive you. So fake voice calls to steal sensitive information. This is called vishing. And then we also have farming. So the farming is fake link or website to deceive people. And then we also have clickjacking. Clickjacking is concealed link, or you can say hidden link, to deceive people into getting sensitive information. Then we also have baiting, out of curiosity, pretexting also. So all these are part of the social engineering. You see so many questions that is talking about that. Spoofing. As for spoofing, they falsify the email header. So the spoofing is email header. Fake email header. So the difference between spoofing and then phishing is that phishing is the fraudulent email messages. Here we are talking about the message. And then here they change the header. They change it. Maybe instead of SirAntwi, then maybe it will be SirAntwi. Then you'll be thinking that you're getting it from SirAntwi, asking you to bring money or something from that email. Then they fake the email header or the sender address and others to deceive you. We call it spoofing. Hoax is a fake news. Fake news, misleading, falsifying information, hoax, and others. How do you prevent all this? You must verify the source, avoid unknown links, and use preventive or encryption or strong password also. Now, technology and society, like the digital divide, we talk about that. Impact of technology on employment, like reduced job loss and others, cyberbullying and cyber stalking, and then digital citizenship, being responsible for all these. Then guidelines for ethical use of computers also. Then there's one other thing that we have to also talk about that. That's the different cyber attacks. Cyber attacks like the following. Bot, bot and botnet and zombie. Now they normally ask this one. The bot is automated, or you can say repetitive. It's a type of cyber attack that causes automated tasks, rendering account or computer inaccessible. So these bots, they are automated, they cause automated, and then they have botnet. Botnet is a group of bots. Hence, we call the bot network. So the botnet is group of bots that causes those automated tasks, which render it inaccessible. And then we also have, through this, then they give zombie, a compromised computer. Are controlled remotely. They are compromised. They are being controlled remotely. We call that computer zombie. So when it has bots and these things, then it will be controlled remotely. And then aside this, we also have, so we have the bot, we have the botnet, we have the zombie, and then we also have what we call DDoS, or we have DOS attack, which is distributed denial of service, or it could be denial of service. So the DOS is denial of service, and the DDoS is distributed denial of service. So here is where when the computers are having these bots and botnet, they make so whereby the account is rendered inaccessible. So meaning you cannot get access to it. When they have all this one, they call it distributed denial of service. And from here, then they now demand what's called the ransomware. Ransomware, then they demand ransomware, whereby they demand money. So they lock the account and then they will now demand money. So you must know this comparison, the bot, the botnet, the zombie, the DOS attacks, and then also ransomware. Right, so that is all about social implications. And then if we check some questions under social implications, we have the phishing attack. We have the internet banks. Here they are talking about farming definition. Adware, software that download and bombard your computer with an advert is called adware, advertising software. Now, the computer theft include the use of bots in does explain them. So the bot, which is the robot, is a compromised computer. So here you can just say that can be controlled remotely. So they do automated tasks. Then they can cause a zombie for you. Then what is the computer virus? A program written or a malware to disrupt the normal function of the computer. How does a computer worm works? They distribute, they replicate themselves without a person running infected program. Why are public computers risked due to spyware and keylogger? Spyware, they monitor and track your computers secretly. But then the keylogger, they record keystrokes. So you must know they use the keylogger to do what we call the spyware. Right. And then Trojan. What is Trojan? They disguise themselves. Why is it difficult to fight computer crimes? Most crimes happen virtual where that means you don't see them, and difficult to trace them also. Spam, which is the unsolicited emails. Identity theft involves collecting data to pretend to be someone else, like creating a fake Facebook account using another person's details. Card schema, they can ask you this question. Card schema, which is a device that reads and stores data on a magnetic stripe card. Like, for instance, your bank card, when you go there and then you slot in your bank card, you must always check. They can put a card schema that will record or take your magnetic stripe of your bank card, and then they will go and duplicate one. That is the card schema. Why is it important to password protect wireless network? To prevent unauthorized access. Also, other than measures to prevent malware infection, how do you prevent malware infections? You need to install and update antivirus to see new viruses. Avoid giving out personal information, and then don't click unknown links also. Scam. Phishing. Password also. It should be 8 characters long, mixture of upper and lower case. And then it must include numbers also. Now, features to reduce online harassment. You must block the user on the social media, report them, change your privacy settings on social media, restrict access, and ignore different buttons. You don't click on them. One negative effect of pirated software: legal consequences, malware or virus infections also. Now, two indications of a phishing email. So a phishing email might contain suspicious link or poor grammar or spelling. You must check some of these things for phishing email and others, or phishing. You must check the sender's address, the grammar, and then also the links. Check the definitions also, whatever that they write. Why email reject .exe? It could be security reasons. Exe could be virus, spread of malicious also. Now, guidelines for composing email. You must follow the netiquette. Geotagging, embedded local data in the media files, that like GPS coordinates and others. Then geotagging may be on animals. They can ask you some of these are some of the questions they might ask in a scenario way. Ways to reduce email spam: you must filter them out. Preventing tagging on Facebook: you must adjust your settings. So some of the questions from previous question papers. Advantages of cars connected to the internet. That is the cars that are connected to the internet. They have navigation and real-time traffic updates, entertainment access, remote diagnosis, emergency assistance. If your car is connected to internet, you can do all this. Vehicle tracking and others. Kickstarter, which is crowdfunding. How does it benefit? How does crowdfunding benefit entrepreneurs? They present ideal or projects, and then they also assist people. They ask public for money to assist a project also. And then they are also use they use these funds that they get to launch a new product also. Then the geotagging, like we said, preventing options for green computing. How do you prevent green computing? Printing both sides, double-sided, like we discussed also. A group of remotely controlled computers are called botnet. Then examples of malicious tasks that can be done: denial of service, spreading virus, and others. Now, disadvantages of e-learning. Like e-learning, you don't see the person face to face. It requires self-discipline. And then also you need a fast and reliable internet connection. Telecommuting, working from home, benefit and disadvantages also. All these are part of social implication: identity theft, negative consequence of 3D printers, and then AUP policies: not visiting illegal or inappropriate sites, no downloading or pirated software, and others. So you have to know all these IoT advantages and disadvantages. They are all part. AR, augmented reality, which is different from VR. So the AR, mostly for educational training, gaming, and then virtual tours and others. But then the VR, that one is virtual reality. So the definition of AR is technology that add digital elements into the real world. So they augment. Augment means adding. So they add digital elements like images and sound into the real world, like a smartphone, tablet, and then AR glasses. So when you use your smartphone camera to see virtual furniture in your home before you buy it, it is part of the AR. But then you must know the advantages: social engineering examples, benefits of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, that is the digital currencies. And then the benefits are that they are cheaper and they don't need banks, decentralized also, and inflation does not also affect it. You must know some of these cryptocurrencies. And VPN, like we talk about VPN, they can also ask you under the social implications, how to protect yourself on social media, and then from hackers also. BYOD, bring your own device, where employees are allowed to bring their own devices to connect to the network, or where learners are allowed to bring their own device to connect to the network. Then there are problems that are associated with the BYOD in schools or in different workplaces. They can ask that question, like network overload, security risk. Learners can bring viruses to the computers. Inequality between students, some might not also have it. And then device management challenges like compatibility issues. CTS, how do you prevent them? You need ergonomic keyboard and mouse and others. Then again, computer theft in schools, how to protect them, like we discussed it, alarm systems and tracking. EULA, a legal contract between the software owners and then the software users, detailing what you can do and what you cannot do with the software. Right. So risk or disadvantages of Bitcoin: lack of regulations, potential for fraud, and criminals mostly use it also to do their criminal activities. Two, internet activity that can lead to addiction. They are talking about internet activities like online gaming, you can be addicted. Social media browsing, online shopping, people can be addicted to it also. Signs of internet addiction and what you can do about them. Right. How can law enforcement investigate criminals, digital forensic, IP tracing, IP address tracing, and then monitoring also? Definition of DDoS: attack using many computers to overwhelm servers and make it unavailable. So they make your devices unavailable by attacking your devices or your account. Bot and botnet, they like asking to differentiate between them. So infected computer controlled remotely, and then the group of the net bots are called botnet. Ransomware definitions: other like pretexting, creating a fake scenario or identity to obtain a private information, we call it pretexting. And baiting, offering something enticing to deceive people, we call it baiting. So I've added these two also to other forms of social engineering. How do you protect yourself online? Anti-malware, VPN, HTTPS, security protocols, digital signature, digital certificate, firewall, and others. You can pick at least 2 or 3 of them to protect oneself. Right. Now, we end with the last aspect, which is the information management. But then after the lesson, let me check if there are no questions. Yes, you can have access to this. This document will be available as soon as I'm done, because I am adding something to it right now. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to share them also to everybody so that you can have access to all the documents. Right. The last part is information management. And then the videos also, I will break them into smaller aspects. Information management, you need to know data information like we discussed it. Task definition, like your pet. Task definition, what should be included in the task definition? Like, why are you doing the investigation? The aspect that needs to be included, the target audience. So all these must be mentioned when they ask you about the task definition. Problem solving skills. How do you solve a problem? By planning, analyzing, and others. You have to follow the steps. Then also the questionnaire and then questions. Focus question as against the research questions. The focus question as against the research questions, they can ask you to differentiate between them. Sources of information. Sources of information like books, online, internet, interviews, and others. Then, online and paper-based survey or questionnaire. How to differentiate between the two and advantages of online questionnaire. Faster to distribute, wider audience, and promote green computing. Then the paper one, they less depend on technology. Right, so advantages and disadvantages, you have to know them also. The focus question, narrow task, is the broader question. And then the research questions also depend on the focus question. So when they ask to differentiate between them, the narrow task or broader question, and it should be one question. The research question depends on the focus question. Finding and then assessing information, like search engines, they can ask you questions on that. Evaluating questions and sources, checking the reliability, the bias for the questions in the questionnaire, accuracy, and others. Evaluating website like we discussed earlier, typography, layout, the color schemes, readability, navigation, and different designs. Right. Presenting information, a report structure. Now, when you look at the presentation of information, you can present information in different ways. Visual presentation, or you can have, you send to other people through PowerPoint. You can do your PowerPoint or website and others. So you need to take note of that. And then also, you focus on the report writing. Now, when you are writing a report, what are the sections of the report writing? We have the introduction, that's the body part, and then conclusion or maybe references. Now, the introduction, what they can ask you what the introduction should contain. Remember, the introduction contains what the research is about. Mostly the task definition is written under the introduction. Then the body that will contain your findings and others. Then the conclusion, that's the summary of your findings, and then recommendation. And then the abstract. Abstract is the summary of the research. A brief summary of the research, which talks about your introduction, your findings, and then the conclusion. So if they ask you to define what an abstract is, that's the brief findings. Right. Referencing and then bibliography, they can ask you to differentiate between bibliography and citation. So bibliography and citation. Citation is always at the end of the text, and then to give credit, and then the list of all cited sources is called the bibliography. The copyright plagiarism, and then how to use a spreadsheet and database for the report. Then designing questionnaire, the criteria, closed-ended and then open-ended questionnaires. You need to know these also. Now let's go and check some of the questions under the information management, question and answer. Explain plagiarism. Features of table of content. What do you need to do before you apply table of content? You need the heading styles. Differentiate between citation and footnote. Citation is a brief in-text reference with the author and the year. Footnote is additional details explaining at the bottom of the page. Now, also online against that faster distribution. Why database is, or what database feature to ensure accuracy. That's the validation rule, input mask, drop down, and others. Differentiate between survey and interview. A survey is a written questions, many participants, less detail. Interview is a face-to-face, detailed and time consuming. So these are some of the parameters to differentiate between these two. Reason to check internet info reliability. It could be falsified or outdated, and avoid bias. Meaning of copyright, advantages of online electronic forms. And then why do we use asterisk in a form? That means required. Like the database, they can give it like pet. All these are about pet. URL shortener, easier to share and reduce typing errors. Advantages of queries. Queries can be saved and reused. Filter cannot be saved. Queries can have complex criteria and it's more powerful. Now, reason for asking gender in a survey. Why do we ask gender? Maybe you want to compare by the gender or do analysis using the gender also. Why the published date is not important. In other words, why the currency is not important when you want to focus on the historical fact. If let's say it's talking about historical fact for something that was done in 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you don't focus on the currency. And the math or science formulas also, maybe it's not changing. Why list box better than the combo box? It restricts to valid options and then prevent typing errors and clear to users also. Now, effect of cache website is frequently also. Then you must also look out for other questions like wizard online questions. So you can see these questions keep on repeating for the information management. transferring data without retyping, either CSV, or you do copy and paste, or you export or import. So these questions keep on repeating. How teachers can check plagiarism? They can use the software or compare the style, or they use the phrase, they search for the phrase also. Then the graph, they can give you a graph, then they will ask you to also check or criticize the graph. What are some of the things that needs to be done regarding the graph also? And then the spreadsheet calculations, they can ask you questions on that. So you must take note of these types of questions. Now, we finished with the solution development. As for solution development, that's the practical content. They will ask questions based on your practical experience. Now, it will be in the form of either database or spreadsheet or HTML, or they can combine these. And you can get solution development questions also in the integrated scenarios. Now, take for instance, database table. They can ask you questions about the table properties, like validation rule input mask, queries, and then the report. They can give you a screenshot, then they will ask you to fix that errors. Grouping criteria like and or not wildcard is null and other. They can ask you that. Calculated field, and then the grouping with the summations. They can ask you that. Validation rules, data types, and properties. These are the things that you must watch out for regarding database. Regarding spreadsheet, different functions and formula, basic function, error indicators, hashtag too narrow, hashtag name, you must know this, hashtag ref, hashtag value, hashtag num. They can ask you that. Name ranges, other complex functions like VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP, text functions. They can give you a text function, then they'll ask you to debug that. Maybe there was an error there. They can ask you the minutes and others, then they will ask you to also make changes to that. Right, date and time calculations. They can give you a calculation, then they will tell you to give the output with a date and time. Combining functions. Then the Microsoft Word, they normally ask about the layout of the Microsoft Word or the referencing. They can ask you about that. Reviewing, proofing, track changes. When do we use that? Or they will say Microsoft Word features. Mail merge. What are the sources of mail merge? We need Word database and then spreadsheet as a source of mail merge. Then again, things like the layout, integration with other softwares. So basically, these are the things that they are going to ask you regarding the HTML, where the basic text. You have to watch out for some of the questions that I've identified and I've demonstrated with you guys. You have to go through them. Then when it comes to the integrated scenario, you have to deduce from the scenario given to you. Whenever you are answering them, you must refer to the scenario. Don't just give the answers. And this one comprises all the content. They add system technologies. They will add network and internet, social implications, solution development, and then information management. They will put all of them together for question 9 and 10. And remember, this one constitutes 50 marks, 1/3 of the entire question. So you must watch out for some of these questions, like this spreadsheet and others. They can ask so many questions that I listed over here. Right. I think that brings to the end of this, and there are so many questions that you can go through them. I wanted to show you some of the scenario questions. Like this solution development, they gave this type of question. The field that is most appropriate for primary key, and state why you have chosen this field. Now you can see here, they have given the description. So you need to check the description. Check the description. This is the barcode to identify each book. To identify each book, that means unique. So that should be primary key. So barcode number should be the primary key. When they give you the description, you must always check that. For the fiction field, fiction or non-fiction. So it should be yes and no. So there are options. So you say yes and no, the data type. So these are some of the questions that they can ask, giving you a scenario. State the most appropriate data type for number of copies field. Number of copies in stock. So it should be number. It should be number. Sometimes they can give in currency. If they say options to choose from, it's lookup wizard. So you have to look at for some of these things. Which word processing feature would use to generate personalized letter to send to each learner with outstanding this one? That is the mail merge to generate that, to send the letters to each and every one. It's a mail merge feature. So you have to look out for some of these things. Hashtag NA, that means they're going to ask you a question about that. Here, VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP is giving NA. Now they're asking why is it giving NA? So you have to now check. They are referring to F2. Here's F2. So if you check here, this is the table. There's no equipment there. Oh yeah, there's equipment needed, so F2 is correct. And then again, A1 up until that. A1 up until this to be C5. Yes, it is correct there. 3, we are picking from the third one. This is total cost, item price. So they'll get it, that is correct. False. False is exact match. Exact match. Next time G2, they are multiplied by G2. Now, when it picks the multiply by G2, this question says, correct the function or explain why the function does not work. So you can see after that, then they multiply by the value in G2. So VLOOKUP, F2, the table was that, design properly in column 3, 3-in-1 printer, keyboard, mouse, and others. So it could be that not all the options are here. The false might be a problem. So you could have been also true. And then you are taking from the third one. And then they also said A1, they included the heading instead of A2. That was the problem. They're supposed to, VLOOKUP, you don't have to include the headings also. So always when you get that type of question, identify it, just compare, then you explain. So watch out for some of these. Give 2 possible reasons for hyperlinks not working on a save page, maybe on a save HTML page. Hyperlink is not working, maybe the format, the extension, maybe .html, then you are making it as .doc, or the ahref, you do not use hyperlink reference properly, or it is not saved on the same page, it is in different location. So this type of question, you apply your practical experience. Now, this is what I was talking about regarding the integrated scenario. They combine all of them. They combine. What kind of computer is most likely to use a computer with these specifications? So check them. Powered riser, PSU is there. SSD, HD 18 inches. So 18 inches is too big. So it could be either a left, oh, here they say computer user. So the computer user, that is either Soho, a power user. So this one should be a power user. At least 16 gig RAM. This could be a power user. There's GPU, so it's a power user. The manufacturer of the graphic processor, then you go and check the graphic processor, which is GPU. And is it NVIDIA? That's the manufacturer. And then the size is 8 gig RAM. 8 gig, that's the size, not the RAM, sorry. Then Intel manufactured the CPU, and then the RAM size is this. So you must always check the scenario and you'll be able to explain them. How is the size of the monitor measured diagonally? They are talking about the size, they did not talk about the unit of measurement. Give the size of the unit, which is the inches. Then you talk about that. Bitcoin. Explain what a Bitcoin is. It's a digital currency. Limitations of digital currency like Bitcoin. We discuss it. It's not regulated. Criminals also use, and others. Advantages of using SSD. Durable. They want 3 advantages. Durable, faster access, read and write, and then also it uses less energy. Those 3 you must know it. Function of PSU, power supply unit. It gives a constant power to the computer. It is inside. So they're talking about the function of it. Either you explain or you give 2 functions of it. AI, artificial intelligence in human way. The chatbot, is it they're asking you to define AI. Those definitions are the new terminologies. You must know them. Always they will ask 1 or 2 questions of it. Email farming, that is the fake website or fake links. And spoofing whereby they forge the email header. It's a fake email header and then they use to deceive people. Consequences of a malware. Social consequences. If you are attacked by malware, what are some of the social consequences that you can get? You lose a lot of data and then some reputation. Sometimes you lose your work. They'll quarantine them. Malware, like for instance, if you have ransomware, reputation, especially for a company, a big company, reputation also. Right. So these are some of the things. Check, refer to it. There's all these are there. Augmented reality, information overload, e-learning versus m-learning. Weaknesses of digital communication, ergonomics, and then all these. Please make sure you go through them. I have shared them with you. When you go there, all the notes are here, and I will share the link to these files also under the videos. You can get access to them, and then you go through them before you write your final examination. All of them are here, the last push, and then the theory questions, and then there's another one, the last push. There are 2 questions, last push questions, and then the theory questions, and then the material also, the details, and then this material if you want to go through them. And then the tips for answering questions also, I provided them here for you in terms of the distribution, the multiple choice, and what you must do. You must follow these tips also so that it will assist you to achieve better marks. All right. Now, this brings to an end of our session. I'm going to make it available right now as we are done. Thank you so much for your precious time. We will end here, and then I will send the link, and then the videos also. I'm going to break them down for everybody in terms of system technologies and all other videos. Thank you for your precious time. I wish you all the best.